What they did was a perversion of the American way. They had the best product, they had the best people selling the product.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is...
You ever heard about Frank Lucas? You know, the big shot gangster they talk about in that movie American Gangster? Well, let me tell you, there's a whole lot more to his story than what you saw on screen. You see, Frank Lucas was the real deal in the streets, but there's some stuff they didn't tell you in that movie. Like, did you know he had a network stretching far and wide? Yeah, he wasn't just some local hustler. He was playing in the big leagues. And get this, the man had style. He wasn't just about making money, he was about making a statement. You should have seen the way he carried himself, like he owned the whole dang city. There were whispers, rumors, about how he really operated. Some say he had connections in high places. Others say he was smarter than anyone gave him credit for. So buckle up, because I'm about to spill the tea on Frank Lucas like you've never heard before. This ain't your average gangster tale. So in the late 1960s and early 1970s, something dark swept through America's streets like a wildfire. It wasn't just any trouble, it was a wave of that shook the nation to its core. Back then, President Nixon called it the war on drugs, declaring it public enemy number one. But this was not just some distant battle, it was a fight raging in every corner of the country. Between 1969 and 74, the number of people hooked skyrocketed from around 240,000 to over 500,000. And no place felt the sting of this crisis more than the New York tri-state area. In the poorest neighborhoods like Harlem, it was like a nightmare come to life. Crime rates soared, with Harlem seeing a staggering 50% increase compared to the rest of New York City. Imagine walking through schoolyards and finding needles scattered like confetti, or seeing people so skinny and wasted it was clear they were slaves to their addiction.
You go to the schoolyards and you find needles, the fullest. You would see emaciated people who obviously were addicted to drugs, staggering around, lying on the streets. You'd find needles all over the place.
But it wasn't just the addicts suffering. People were dying, and the gangsters, they were raking in cash faster than you could say drug lord. They'd even switch up the names of their products like they were selling the latest gadget just to hook more folks in. Names like Meme Machine, Coolie High, or Harlem Hijack were all over the streets, each one more deadly than the last. Then came Blue Magic, a new brand that hit the scene like a wrecking ball. It was so strong that just picking up an empty envelope could be deadly. Rumor had it that Blue Magic was K-ing folks left and right from New York to New Jersey, and suddenly everyone wanted to know where it was coming from and who was behind it.
A new brand, Blue Magic.
That's when things got interesting. Officials set up special task forces to hunt down the source of this deadly flood of heroin. It was like a real-life detective story with twists and turns at every corner. Everyone had their theories, but no one knew for sure. And that's where the real drama began. Now Dom Omarosa, the hard-hitting US attorney taking charge in the gritty streets of New York City, leading a team of NYPD and DEA officers. Omarosa is on a mission to bring down drug lords thriving on the city streets. His motivation? To serve justice and rid the city of those profiting from its destruction. Across the river in New Jersey, Assistant District Attorney Richie Roberts wages his own war against the criminal empire behind Blue Magic, a potent drug wreaking havoc in the community. Roberts, born in the Bronx, has witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of heroin driving his relentless pursuit of justice. Roberts, a former Marine and detective, brings a wealth of experience to his fight against crime. Since 1968, he's been gathering intel on street-level dealers aiming to dismantle the drug trade from the bottom up. But by 1970, a surprising name emerges from the shadows: Frank Lucas, a black crime boss from Harlem.
I had someone in my own family who became addicted to I felt a need to find out who was doing this, to lock him up. I wanted it stopped.
Lucas's rise to power is a tale of violence and ambition. Starting as a teenage robber, he quickly climbed the ranks under the mentorship of Harlem's legendary gangster Bumpy Johnson. When Johnson passes away, Lucas seizes the opportunity, claiming his turf and establishing a ruthless reign with the help of his country boys from North Carolina.
Bumpy was the mentor, Frank was the protege. Frank wanted to get into the business, and Bumpy sort of introduced Frank on his way.
These country boys, Lucas's entrusted enforcers, rule the streets with brutality, eliminating rival dealers and tightening their grip on the drug trade. Their tactics are ruthless, but effective as they dominate both New Jersey and New York with their superior product and strategic control. For Roberts and his team, taking down Lucas means unraveling his empire piece by piece. They hit the streets, chasing leads and gathering evidence to dismantle his operation. But in a world world where every cut of heroin means more profit for the dealers, finding the source is no easy task. As they delve deeper into the underworld, Roberts and his task force navigate a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Every informant, every lead brings them closer to Lucas's doorstep, but also closer to the violent reality of the drug trade. But building trust with informants is tough and risky. You mess up, someone could end up dead. Undercover work is super dangerous, but the whole point is to dig up info on the bad guys and their crew. You gotta know who's calling the shots. It's like a game of cat and mouse, but you can't rush it. You gotta take your time, build those connections, cause these folks are deep into illegal stuff. They know the stakes are high. They're cautious, especially if someone tries to cozy up too quick. It took long hours and high stakes, but it was worth it when they finally got a lead, like when they found out about Shorty Lucas, Frank's cousin. Shorty was a big deal in Jersey. Tough as nails and everyone knew it. He had a rep for being a real threat. People respected him, feared him even. He was the kind of guy you didn't mess with. But even with Shorty in their sights, they couldn't make a move. They needed more evidence. It was frustrating. They couldn't nail down the connection to Frank. No one was talking, and while they were stuck, people were still dying. Lucas and his crew of country boys thought they had it all figured out. Peddling their stuff on the streets, they thought they were untouchable. But boy, were they in for a surprise. Little did they know their golden stash was coming from halfway across the globe, straight from Asia. And let me tell you, this wasn't just any ordinary stuff. It was pure, untouched by anything else. Now, during the Vietnam War, things were getting real messy. Heroin was sneaking its way into the US like nobody's business, all the way from a place they called the Golden Triangle in Laos, Burma, and Thailand. You see, during the war, a lot of soldiers got a taste of that stuff over in Vietnam, and when they came back home, some of them brought back more than just memories. They brought back a nasty habit. Soon enough, the cops were busting more and more folks with that Asian heroin in their pockets. Meanwhile, across the Hudson River in New York, Assistant U.S. Attorney Dom Omarosa and his task force have their own suspicions. They're convinced Lucas is still in cahoots with the mafia buying his heroin from the old school. Leading the charge is DEA agent Greg Konilov, targeting Italian heroin teas with laser focus. Their main target? Anthony Rosino, a mob associate with deep ties to organized crime. But fate takes a turn when an unexpected informant emerges, Jimmy Cohan, a larger-than-life figure with a knack for survival. Thanks to a chance encounter in prison, Cohan becomes the DEA's eyes and ears, secretly buying heroin from Rosino. Little does Rosino know Cohan's working for the feds. Every meeting, every purchase, all recorded, all documented. It's a dangerous game of cat and mouse with lives on the line. With Cohan wearing a wire, the DEA was able to gather enough evidence to make a move. They raided Rosino's apartment and struck gold, seizing pounds of heroin and incriminating ledgers that tied Lucas to the drug trade. But they still needed Rosino to testify against Lucas, and that's where things got tense. Rosino faced a choice: cooperate with the authorities or spend the rest of his life behind bars. In the end, he chose to talk, sealing Lucas's fate. He mentioned Lucas as a major buyer of heroin and not a great payer either. With this info, the DEA had enough to move in. They raided Lucas's home in Teaneck, New Jersey, with hearts pounding and adrenaline pumping. They didn't know what they'd find or who they'd find. Would Lucas's country boys be ready for a showdown? But when they knocked on the door, there stood Lucas, unarmed and caught off guard. He knew the game was up as they arrested him for narcotics, T. His wife and maid were frantically tossing bags of cash out the window. Inside the house, they hit the jackpot. $500,000 in cash stashed away. It was the street money, the kind dealers would accept without a second thought. As they counted the cash, Lucas watched, knowing his empire was crumbling before his eyes. They will have to prove that Vecino's ledger is more than just circumstantial evidence, and that the $500,000 found in Lucas's house is without doubt the profits from sales, otherwise the kingpin could walk free. Lucas sat in jail while waiting for his trial, but his heroin business didn't just survive, it thrived. Picture this: magic was still flowing, people lying on the streets, and Lucas's country boys were running the show. But the authorities had their eyes set on nailing Lucas's crew, ready to bust his booming empire wide open. Now the task force was on high alert, knowing the dangers lurking in Lucas's world. They needed to catch a break, and after months of surveillance, they got it. Word on the street was a massive heroin shipment was en route, sending waves of excitement through the city's underbelly. So the team set up shop, tracking small-time dealers and addicts waiting for their chance. And then it happened. A steady stream of activity from one particular building. Rumor had it that's where the action was, but here's where it gets interesting. Identifying the right apartment was like finding a needle in a haystack. Days turned into nights as the team staked out the location hoping for a breakthrough, and then a stroke of luck. Intel on Shorty Lukas, a key player in the game. Finally, they had the green light to move in. Shorty wasn't known for playing nice. The risk was real, but so was the reward. With guns drawn and hearts pounding, the task force stormed the apartment not knowing what awaited them on the other side. And what they found was beyond their wildest expectation. Kilos of stacks of cash, and a web of connections leading straight to Lukas himself. It was the bust of a lifetime and everyone felt the rush of victory. But the battle was not over yet. With Lukas behind bars, the authorities turned up the heat on his crew. Threats were made, deals were offered, but silence prevailed. Until one day a breakthrough, Lukas's own nephew willing to spill the beans in exchange for a shot at freedom. And Spilly did, revealing every detail of Lukas's operation with stunning clarity. It was like a puzzle coming together with each piece fitting perfectly into place. With this insider information, the authorities had Lukas right where they wanted him, cornered and exposed. When it came time to face the jury, something was not right. The evidence didn't pack the punch he expected. It was like trying to start a fire with wet matches, but Roberts wasn't one to give up easily. He knew he needed something big, something unexpected, so he rolled the dice one last time and called a witness nobody saw coming. A grieving mother from the projects. This woman, with pain etched into every line on her face, told a story that cut through the courtroom like a knife. Her daughter, a victim of blue magic, lay lifeless on a bathroom floor, a needle still in her vein. The silence that followed her testimony was deafening. The tears were real. You see, sometimes the truth is not in fancy words or complicated evidence. Sometimes it's in the raw emotion of a mother who lost everything to a ruthless drug lord. And that drug lord? None other than Frank Lukas himself. The connections ran deep like roots of a gnarled tree spreading through the city's streets. But even the mightiest tree can fall, and Lukas was no exception. As the trial dragged on, tension hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Roberts held his breath, waiting for the verdict that would make or break his career. Guilty. The word echoed like thunder in the courtroom, shaking the ground beneath their feet. For Roberts, it was a victory hard-earned, a weight lifted from his shoulders. But for Lukas, it was the beginning of the end. 30 years behind bars, a lifetime of regrets staring back at him from behind cold metal bars. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no. There's more to this tale than meets the eye. Roberts wanted more than just a conviction, he wanted justice. So he waited for the call he knew would come. The call that would unravel Lukas's empire piece by piece. And when that call finally came, it was like striking gold. Lukas spilled his secrets like a faucet turned full blast, revealing names and connections that sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. But even as Lukas's empire crumbled, there was still one more chapter to be written. A federal trial, a final showdown where justice would be served once and for all. And serve it did, with Lukas facing an additional 40 years behind bars, and his ill-gotten gains seized from under his nose. Facing an additional 40 years behind bars and his whopping $37 million fortune seized. His empire, spanning from office buildings in Detroit to apartments in Los Angeles, Miami, Puerto Rico, and Harlem, plus bank accounts stashed away in the Cayman Islands, all gone in a blink. Now add to the drama 70 years of jail time looming over him. It's a dire situation, one that could break anyone. But here's where it gets interesting. Lukas decides to play ball with the US attorneys. Lukas had a motivation to shave off some years from his sentence, just like many others in his shoes. So what does he do? He spills the beans. Lukas spills it all. He unveils the bigwigs in the narcotics game, revealing names, operations, and secrets buried deep in the underworld. Imagine this, Lukas, once a kingpin, now turns informant. It's a twist straight out of a Hollywood movie. But this is real life, folks. Lukas's cooperation doesn't just save his skin, it sends shockwaves through the narcotics world. Lukas held the key to bringing down some of the biggest players in the drug trade, and boy does he deliver. With his insider knowledge, Lukas becomes the ultimate informant, leading to the downfall of 25 additional drug lords. Lukas's collaboration with the authorities closes a dark chapter in the fight against heroin. His testimony, his insider information, it all adds up to justice served. But for Lukas, it's more than that. It's redemption. A man once branded a criminal, now hailed a hero. Lukas's actions may have put him behind bars, but they also saved lives. Lives of people he has never met. lives he's touched without even knowing. But the drama didn't end there. Enter Juliana Ferret, the wife of Frank Lucas, who found herself in hot water after attempting to sell 2 kilograms of coke in Puerto Rico. This 70-year-old woman, whose life was intertwined with crime, appeared in court with a request for the judge to speak Spanish. Ferret was charged with conspiracy to violate narcotics laws but had yet to enter a plea. According to allegations, she was caught discussing the sale of coke with an informant and was subsequently arrested at a hotel in Isla Verde, Puerto Rico, where the drugs were unveiled. This wasn't Ferret's first brush with the law. Back in 1975, her husband's arrest led to the seizure of over $500,000. Lucas was convicted and sentenced to 40 years in prison, only to be released in 1991 as earlier mentioned. During his incarceration, Ferret served 5 years herself. Ferret, known for her attraction to danger, once expressed her fondness for a life of luxury, reminiscing about trips, diamonds, and a Mercedes-Benz. Her words painted a picture of someone who understood the value of wealth, despite its association with crime.